Welcome, lovely listener. You are listening to the companion piece to the comedy episode we put up before, the Comedy of 2016 episode. I'm talking about comedy that we enjoy in general and pitching to Matt some comedy ideas for him to watch. All with our special guest, comedian Juliette Burton. But we did in fact talk much longer on the subject of comedy. What is comedy? What do we really like? What do we dislike? Or everything else. Unfortunately, that couldn't make it into the main episode, so here it is. I've cut it out into its own single episode, because it's all interesting stuff and I think it's worth putting out. We have the same outro because I only recorded one outro. I didn't record multiple outros, but so forgive me for that. But otherwise, this is all new stuff. If you haven't listened to the main episode yet, then please do. It's the Comedies of 2016 episode 7. Please find the show, the Deleted Scene Podcast, on Facebook or on Twitter at Deleted Scene Pod. You can find Juliette on Facebook and Twitter and on her website as well. Episodes go out every Wednesday, us talking about film and TV and a topic of our choosing. And then bonus episodes like this little one will go out over the weekends. Not all the time, but sometimes. So here it is, hope you enjoy more comedy chat with Juliette Burton. Well, let's move on to our main topic, because we are today, this is the comedy episode, talking about comedy. Because I think when people think about 2016, they're going to remember the laughter. That's what we've got here.
Well, if you think about it, Margaret Thatcher was really great for comedy.
Yeah, but I think Margaret Thatcher is. I think I agree. Satire was ripe at that time, that era. But this year, a lot of comics are saying that this is the year that satire died because
of Donald Trump.
Everything has just become so. Like uber satirical in itself. You can't. It's hard to satirize this absurdity.
Like if we weren't living in it, it would be a fantastic comedy show.
I'm sure that there are aliens on other planets watching what's happening now, just laughing.
Well, I cannot wait until the next episode.
Yeah, what a cliffhanger
on Space Netflix.
I've said on Twitter that I genuinely sometimes can't tell the difference between the Donald Trump's Twitter account and the parody Donald Trump Twitter account. They are equally as stupid, and that's ludicrous.
I know that.
I think a lot of people are doing it. It's fine. It's
also
fine.
Things like Al Murray, the pub landlord. I was in an interview with him where he said basically I had to rewrite my entire show after the Brexit vote because I thought it was going to be. We thought we were going to be Remain, and obviously the pub landlord is the classic. Leave voter. He almost is Nigel Farage, and actually he stood as the pub landlord against Nigel Farage in whether it was Thanet Sal.
It is difficult because I as a working comedian and comedy writer and actor, most of the comedy community, you kind of can guess what the majority of their political leanings are, and therefore you do hear a lot of similar jokes or from a similar standpoint. And that's great because I enjoy them, but then it can be that kind of thing like with Al Murray that there is another subsection of society that do have differing views and they want to hear their views expressed as well. So
that's one of the things that the BBC gets criticised for, is not having enough right-wing comedians. But actually that's not because they decide that they will have left-wing comedians. It's that there are very few right-wing comedians. If you want to be guaranteed to get work at the BBC, be a right-wing leaning comedian.
Oh, don't give that a top tip out there. Please don't.
Because there's only so many shows that Simon Evans or who's a German guy.
The one German guy.
There's only one German.
No, the German. You know the
Henning Vane.
Henning Vane, yeah. I've seen him as well. I've seen him live. He's really, really good. But there are only so many shows that they can go on to be a right-wing point of view or a non-left point of view.
I got into comedy for a similar reason that I never used to think that I was political. Is that I love things that unite, and I think politics is so divisive,
Yeah.
which is a huge problem. But then by doing comedy, which does unite, you've got all these people who probably have that very definitely have different backgrounds, different lives, different experiences, and probably different political views. You have them in a room and they're all laughing in recognition at what the person on stage is saying. That's very unifying. But having been working in comedy for a while, I now realise I actually do have political views. And
you had a great Donald Trump joke on Friday, because we went to see your show on Friday.
Yeah, you guys very kindly came out and host a night in East London called Happy Hour, and it's just a new material night for comics that I really rate, because new material nights can be a bit hit and miss, but then it's kind of lovely when you have these incredible acts that I can't believe they're not getting paid. It's a free gig. All the donations go to the venue, which is the Canvas Cafe, which is a brilliant place.
It's a brilliant venue.
And it's awesome. But they still, the comics, no matter what stage you're at in your career, you still need somewhere to go and test out new material. And you don't know how it's going to go. And you guys very kindly came and laughed at the joke.
I've been trying to come for ages. I just can't seem to make it, but then
You did it.
made it this
I gotta
time.
say, interesting thing. I was out yesterday, and so I went into a shop and I heard the first cut is the deepest song on there, and I just got like a flashback to Friday. There with the cucumber.
Jojo Bellini, shout out to her. She was our final act on Friday, and she does something with a cucumber to that song.
Which is brilliant. Which I went to start
It's
with,
hilarious.
it's so funny. And then I just heard that song and I was like just laughing to myself in the shop.
I love the happiness game. We play a game at the end of every happy hour where I get all the acts back on stage, and we ask them to nominate their one key to happiness, and then give the audience an argument about why this is their one key to happiness, and then you guys, the audience, had to vote. So we had Steve Day, Alexander Bennett, and Jojo Bellini, and Alexander Bennett kind of said maybe being mistaken for the wrong gender, but liking it,
because he often gets mistaken for a girl because he's got very long hair.
even though he has a beard now.
Like he's definitely very blokish looking. But I guess from the back. Maybe.
And then Steve Day said neglecting your children.
Which is
key to
good
happiness.
advice for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, he had a good argument. I kind of can't remember why that was the kid. And then Jojo Bellini, who won the audience vote, said that the key to happiness was having a partner who enjoys giving, but not necessarily receiving. In a sexual way. I'm curious to know, how did you guys vote? Who did you want to win?
I voted for Jojo.
Yeah, me too.
Interesting. I now know a lot about you guys.
You've got our mentality right there.
Mainly
Very
because
narcissistic.
I don't have kids, so I would.
So
But
you
if I
don't,
did, I
you don't
would
have
neglect
kids
them.
to neglect.
Yeah.
Well, you could adopt and neglect.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of
Don't
work.
write that on the form, of course. But
Yeah.
But you you very kindly said that I had a good Trump joke, so thank you for that.
I want to know what the
did.
Trump joke is now. But
Well,
then if it's broadcast, it'd be like a spoiler for the.
We did what we I wanted to test out. I had written, because since my last happy hour, which was only like just over a month ago, since then
So much.
it's so much. The world has gotten into a blacker place. It's just been very, very dark. But I've written loads about it, because that's one of the joys. Like, I know one of the questions you guys were thinking of was like, does comedy have to be funny, and how funny does it need to be? But for me, it's like, if I go through something really, really dark and I don't know how to deal with it, the only way I can cope is to write. And sometimes it's writing that isn't funny, and that goes into articles usually. But quite often I have to find the funny in it, because it's a survival technique, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of homebrew therapy in a way for quite a lot of writers. Actually use it as a.
I often get asked, because I'm very open about my mental health in my comedy as well, and I'm often asked by interviewers whether my comedy is therapy, which is it's been a question that's been around for a long time.
it's on my list of questions. It's ruined now.
Oh, well, let me answer it for you and save your breath. I think because there's so many comedians who do struggle with mental health conditions, and I think there's been so many different research done into, like, I think comedians, out of all the artistic jobs, comedians are the ones most likely to have depression.
Yeah.
And yeah, that we're also most likely to die younger, which I think is a good thing because that means I don't have to earn that much. But yeah, I think for me, I always say, having been in therapy for over half my life now, for my mental health conditions, I say that I deal with stuff in therapy. And then I bring it to the stage because it's something that if it's really raw, it can go very wrong on stage. And I think audiences have a sense about whether you're comfortable talking about what it is you're talking about.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that it's a safety thing that once I've dealt with it in a healthy way with my therapist, then I can deal with it on stage. But then it's brilliant because things like my anxiety disorder and my eating disorders and my depression, I have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. So there's a wealth of hilarity to be found in that.
I generally find as well, like I've had this before. Like last year, me and my flatmate had a really, really hard year, and it got to the point where things were so difficult and so ridiculous that at one point we were stood in our hallway just laughing because it's one of those.
Yeah.
It's so bad that you either laugh or you cry.
Yeah.
And it's almost like if you were watching it, if you were watching it from the outside, you weren't emotionally involved, it would probably be funny.
I mean, laughing is a tension release. So on a biological level, the same way as telling a set up punchline gag, it's the same as if somebody trips on a banana skin. There's tension because there's some kind of fear. We don't know where we're going and we're leading up, and that it could be quite scary. Something bad could happen, and then we laugh with relief when it's either the punchline is a twist on where we thought the story was going, or somebody's tripped over on a banana skin. Thank fuck it's not me.
Yeah.
That's horrible, but it is.
Russell Howard said there's a certain type of laugh that you get when you're walking through the park and you see an old lady hit by a frisbee. That's when the laugh comes right from the belly. That's the kind of I know I mustn't laugh, but I have to laugh. And it's very different to the laugh you get from a kind of like a clever bit of wordplay or a bit of political satire. But you get different types of laugh with those. It
isn't so far removed though, because it is just that kind of the twist. It's a
similar sort of psychology.
Yeah, I think I read something in a brilliant book called The Naked Jape, which I highly recommend. Is
that Jimmy Carr
and Lucy Greaves. They co-wrote it together, and Lucy Greaves did a lot of work on it as well. But yeah, I think in there they explain that it's, and I'm going to mess this up, but so please read the book and then tweet me to tell me how it's actually phrased. But I think it's something like that. It's the principle of back in caveman days, before language was developed further. You'd be running along, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something, and that's the same as your setup to the gag. And then you're drawing near to the edge of a cliff, and the tension's building and building and building, and then the saber-toothed tiger is the one that falls over the edge of the cliff, and that's when you would laugh with relief that, oh god, I thought it was going one direction, I thought I was going to die, and then it's changed. And that's the same with the frisbee, because it's like, oh, the frisbee might be coming towards me, no, it's hit the old lady, ha ha ha. That's horrible, but yeah. And then with wordplay, it's you think you so well. Exactly. With wordplay, it's that you think it's going one direction, and then it changes direction. So it's same with puns, simple puns.
Oh, I love puns.
I think in that book they said of a joke, so not comedy, not all comedy, but of a joke, they're all follow the same track, which is you have two parallel stories, two parallel kind of possibilities, and everything leads you to believe you're in one side until you get to the punchline, which then suddenly reveals that you've been in the other track all along. And that's how almost every joke works.
They used an example of a story involving penguins in that book that I can't remember, so that's a great anecdote for you. But do read the book because it is fantastic. But yes, you're led to believe one train of thought, and your mind is filling in the blanks. Going, well, obviously it's going to go down here, and then you have a little twist, and that's the joy of it.
I think they found one of the oldest jokes that is still in existence as well. So it's a joke that appeared in ancient Greece, but Jimmy Carr said, I've actually seen comedians do it or a version of it, today. And the thing is, the guy goes into a barber's and sits down in a chair, and the barber says, how would you like your haircut? He goes, in silence. and that's one of the oldest jokes that's kind of still in.
Comedy's
in
all
use.
about delivery, isn't it? It went really well. Yeah. No,
Well, I didn't say it was the best joke ever. I said it's a joke that's still in its.
It is the kind of principles of a joke, and you've got your story, you've got the setup, and then you've got the slight twist on how you think it's going to end.
I mean, I'm curious because like in terms of having comedy as a kind of release, you know, things get really dark and depressing, and everybody gets kind of, you know, what do you have like a go-to comedy film or comedy series where you're just like, I need cheering up, it's on, you're watching it, you know, kind of like something that you kind of immediately go to?
I do, but I've been taking over the microphone, so you guys go first. But I have so many. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just interested.
I'm trying to think. Because I don't own an awful lot of comedy. I tend to I watch a lot of really dark things, but I think it is that thing of it's happening to somebody else, so it's okay. Yeah. The Clueless, I come back to quite a bit. Because that's easy to watch. For me, most of the time, actually, my kind of comedy relief is usually phoning my dad, because he's a walking sitcom, and he's a big fan of like nonsense jokes.
Yes.
So he regularly tells this joke, which most people just kind of go, what? But I find it really funny. So a man walks into a baker's and asks him for a loaf of bread. And the baker says, oh, would you like white bread or brown bread, sir? And he says, it doesn't matter. I've got my bike outside. And see, that's the reaction it normally gets of, what the fuck? Like, that literally makes no sense. But I find it really funny. And my dad finds it really funny. It. It's complete nonsense.
But I was about to say, generally what I like is absurdity and comedy.
So I think that's where...
I mean, like, Spike Milligan. I love Spike Milligan. Yeah. And, you know, Monty Python as well is another big one.
Always good.
Absurdity. Or Eddie Izzard. You know, all those kind of things where it's just kind of complete gibberish. Especially with, you know, like you were saying about delivery, like Eddie Izzard gives really, really authoritative lectures on complete rubbish, and you know, he once said it was he looked at Monty Python, and they said, well, they took kind of, you know, rubbish, tiny little situations and talked about them as if they were kind of really, really important. And he said, so what I did was the opposite. I took huge, important subjects and then talked a load of bollocks about them. And then kind of, you know, they kind of sort of met in the middle on that point.
Yeah, so one of his gigs, he goes, I just want to talk about the creation of the universe very quickly, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
He is fantastic. Do you have anything, Christine? I'm storing mine up, ready to answer.
Well, I tend to go, if I like watching, I'll go to cartoons and I'll go to Futurama and things like that. But for movies, I will go to the Marx Brothers more often than not, because I own every Marx Brothers film, and I just love them. I just can't get enough of.
I think it comes down to what you were like raised
comedy
on as well.
I was raised on Carry On movies.
Yeah,
but I don't watch them anymore.
My dad did a good job of raising me on comedy. I think more than my mother did. My dad introduced me to obviously like Monty Python, but like Jasper Carrot, the Goonies. The Marx Brothers, the two Ronnies, you know, like things.
Oh yeah,
like
the two Ronnies and the Morecambe and Wise. I own a lot of their stuff as well. Really I own mostly really old comedy. I like they got the Ronnie Barker box set somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Ronnie Barker was a really, really good writer as well, and a good actor, not just comedy actor, but he was kind of like almost nothing he couldn't do. Because like if you look at something like Porridge, if you just look at that, even without the humour, it could, you know, not be a comedy program. It could be just a show about these two people in jail. I think when they were writing it, they kind of went around prisons and things like that to get an idea of what the people were like, and they said prison isn't really funny in any way. It's kind of like a really horrible place full of really tragic stories, and it's really hard to make those kind of things funny. But you know, they managed it on that program.
And I think Orange is the New Black is something I'm laughing at a lot at the moment.
That's
very
that's
funny.
a bit.
I've watched Porridge so many times.
Oh, it's classic.
I own all the Mel Brooks films because they just.
Oh yeah, you're a big Mel Brooks fan.
I love Mel Brooks as well.
I love Mel Brooks so much, and I just think it's one of those films that you just put on and instantly feel so much better, laughing all the time. And it's one of those films that it's not like you watch it and kind of go, oh well, I've seen this 1,000 times, so it's not as funny. It's still as funny as it was the first time I saw like Blazing Saddles or Silent Movie.
The Zucker Abrams films as well, which are the Naked Gun and Airplane type.
God, yes.
Well, that was made me think of when you said that old joke. That's what made me think of that, because that's basically answering a question but not the the intended answer, which is very much
with
that
something
sort of style.
like Airplane. It's like with the Shirley, don't call me Shirley. I mean, the way that is the delivery. Nobody else can deliver it in that deadpan kind of way. It's just beautifully executed.
And he started off actually, Leslie Nielsen, doing kind of fairly standard romantic leads. He wasn't in comedy at all. He came to comedy really, really late. But but what he said of Frank Drebin, which is the Naked Gun thing, is he is not a comedy character. He's not someone who goes out and kind of, laughs up and things like this. He's entirely serious about everything he does.
It's like Alan Partridge. You have the character who just, this is absolutely who I am, and the comedic flaw is the gap between who they think they are and who they actually are. Yeah. And that's where the comedy lies. So for me, like the safety kind of, the hot water bottle of comedy is, I've got some go-to ones, but it has changed recently. Yeah. So my go-to ones usually are, all of Friends, and the first episode of Friends is, I know that a lot of people don't like it, and there's a lot of flaws in it, and it did change from season to season, but the first episode of Friends, you learn everything you need to know about all of those characters within the first 30 seconds, apart from Rachel, who appears later in the episode. But you've got 5 characters that you know just from very simple dialogue. You know who they are, or who they think they are, who they actually are, how they interact with other people. It's brilliantly done. And a part of that, again, is that escapism into this world that is actually really quite aspirational. I love Vicar of Dibley, which is I love it. I was 10 years old when that was on TV, and my mother, my parents are not. You were talking earlier about like parents kind of bringing you up on comedy and their tastes. My parents are not massive comedy fans. They don't come to my gigs. It's all right. I love them very much, but that's probably the best way for it to be. My dad he basically watches the news, and sometimes Have I Got News for You? Anything with the word news in the title. But my mum, when I was 10, I was very, very overweight, had really goofy teeth, which I was about to have braces, and they were really sticking out with a big gap in the middle. I was getting bullied really badly. I was developing what now, looking back, was depression and body dysmorphic disorder problems. And my mum was like, you've got to watch Vicar of Dibley every Sunday, because that woman is a great role model for you. She didn't say it that way, but she'd sit there and watch it with me, even though she's not into comedy. And it was, Dawn French just became this hero to me, of somebody who was so charismatic, so funny, so intelligent, witty. Geraldine Granger wasn't, like, apparently the character that was written originally wasn't that funny, like as a comedic character. All the other characters were absurdly funny. So Dawn French insisted that Richard Curtis changed the character a little bit to make her a bit more vain, a bit more flawed in different ways herself. So I love going into that world again, because it's so warm and cozy, and just, these are good characters who really care about each other. It's a family, which is the greatest sitcoms were always some kind of family, whether they're a literal family or not. Having said that, this year, you said that last year you were laughing about how shitty everything had been, and that was 2015, and look at 2016.
Yeah, then it just got worse.
I've got this. I think I might have said this before, but I'm waiting for Time Hop to remind me, because I remember last December having a status that said, 2015's been really awful, and like, can't wait for 2016. Come on, guys. Hindsight.
Did exactly the same.
But yeah, the past kind of, especially since June, but definitely amongst the American election, the run up to it and then after it, and all this, post-truth and alt-right and just all these new terms, echo chamber, all of this stuff. It just it felt overwhelming, and suddenly even Vicar of Dibley and Friends and Frasier, they couldn't just patch up this hole of despair. So I've been turning to what we now, the satire we've got now, John Oliver.
He's really, really good.
Fantastic. You and I have been exchanging messages online about him. It's absolutely wonderful. I've been watching The Last Leg so much more.
Yes.
I keep meaning to get into that.
And then Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you've seen Alec Baldwin's version of Donald Trump.
Yes, I've seen a clip. I've seen a clip of it, and it's brilliant.
I watched. They did like every week, Saturday night. Funnily enough, they do a little sketch at the beginning of the show, and they did with the presidential debates. They did, you know, Hillary and
Was it Kate
and Trump.
McKinnon that was playing Hillary?
There, I think possibly yes.
That's in Ghostbusters.
It's Alec Baldwin for me that I can't get over.
Yeah.
And then you've got this strange thing now that, like, for me, because I couldn't process what was happening, and it was all so much new information so quickly that it was almost like I could learn from the satire more than I could from real life. And then it kind of blended the other way again when Trump got elected. The next Saturday Night Live that they did, they had a sketch at the beginning with Alec Baldwin being Trump, and you know, it was great. He was in the office and he was inviting all these people in, telling him what you couldn't do, and he was backtracking. And Donald Trump tweeted on his actual account, not the parody account, saying, you know, I watched some of Saturday Night Live and I can't believe, you know, it's a highly overrated show, and some of it really was upsetting. And then Alec, and he also said something about why are they picking? I'm paraphrasing badly, but why are they picking on me? They should be picking on both sides. And Alec Baldwin immediately tweeted back this series of tweets that got him in a corner and just said, what do you mean both sides? Like, you won. This there is no one else we're going to be picking on now. It's you. It's only you.
Yeah. This is what you get.
Yeah. And then he gradually went on to say, if I were president-elect, I would be spending my time not tweeting, not watching Saturday Night Live. I'd be spending my time planning what I was going to do to
figuring
change
out how to
the
run
world.
the country.
Yeah, to change things for the better for the American people. And he went on this series of different tweets saying all these things that genuinely Donald Trump could be doing for the good of the American culture and the American populace. And then at the end, Alec Baldwin said, if you need any more advice, you know where to find me. I'll be at the Saturday Night Live offices. And it's just like, yes, thank you.
I think it was John Oliver who said, actually, there was a report that Donald Trump's staff campaign team didn't realise that they would have to hire their own White House staff, that the White House staff are hired by each new president as they come in. So the ones that were hired by Barack Obama will leave, and they didn't realise that. It was kind of like, what? So you're just expecting that, you know, all the kind of civil servants and all the kind of, you know, research and things like that would just say, right, okay, we've been working for, you know, in a sort of left wing, you know, president.
As left wing as America gets.
Yeah. Let's go now to the far right nutcase and undo all the things we've just spent the last 8 years doing.
A lot of articles about Donald Trump and his team didn't realise ...
Yes.
They also didn't realise something else. I feel like it's going to be
That's why he's overturned almost
of
everything
that.
he ran on. He's like, it turns out I can't do any of the things I said I was going to.
This is where comedy has a real job to do.
Yes.
Like, where John Oliver has been saying it, and I hope that a lot of other people are saying it. Last Leg have as well. We can't let him become normalised. It just cannot happen.
Yeah.
We have to keep reminding ourselves how absurd this situation and this man is. I mean, you said he's a nutcase. As somebody who's been sectioned under the Mental Health Act myself, I think nutcases can be fantastic sometimes. But this is a man who has asked his equivalent of the Secretary of Defence to be somebody called Mad Dog.
Yes.
What is he? I'm not really sleeping very well at night at the moment.
Charlie Brooker said, isn't he, as well? He's having the struggling to write 2016 wipe and make it funny.
Waiting for that, yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it. I mean, I love Charlie Brooker, and he's just genius, really. But I don't use that word very often. But also, the men that I know in my life all have a bit of a man crush on him, on Charlie Brooker. Yeah. No.
Christian,
No.
Any thoughts?
No, I can't necessarily say that.
All right.
I'd like to, I'd like to be his friend for sure.
Yeah.
Hang out with him.
Okay.
Charlie Brooker, if you're listening, we don't think you actually would, just,
We're just not into you right now. It's not at that place.
It's been a difficult time for me.
I'm very into him. I'm available, and so is my partner, who has a man crush on Charlie Brooker.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, he's another person who's been so great at kind of helping us digest and make sense of what's going on in the world. And I don't know how he's going to manage 2016 white.
Ian Hislop was talking about screen wipe and said basically what Charlie Brooker did was videotape and then broadcast his media studies degree. That's essentially what that is. If you watch it, it tells you so much about the kind of the workings of television in particular, but the way that all these things are made, and the news as well. If you look at he did like how TV ruined your life.
I love
And
that
it kind of,
series.
it was great, all of them. But they're not just funny. They're not just kind of, you know, reviews. They are really, really informative about the way that, you know, this whole kind of bubble of media that we all live in is created, and the people who do it, and how little they know sometimes.
For me, that's my favourite type of comedy, is when it's obviously funny, but also when it comes from an informed point of view, an informed perspective, that means that you feel comfortable and confident in the voice that is speaking. And Charlie Brooker, I always feel that way, that he knows about all this stuff, and he still can't wrap his head around it, so it still feels absurd to him. And yeah, I mean, the echo chamber thing, that's now, you guys have heard of people saying, "Oh, we're living in an echo chamber." That's another reason it's making me digest news in a different way, but including watching more satire to try to make sense of it, to not just get one perspective.
Because it's something that I've always thought was funny. I think Russell Howard's great. I've always liked Russell Howard, but he has Russell Howard's Good News on BBC Three, which
it's
that's
changing, isn't it? It's
I
going
like
now. Good News is no longer. He's going to
feel
Sky.
I heard that he's going to Sky. I always liked Good News because it would tackle ridiculous things that were happening in the news, and he would just kind of take the piss out of it, or he would just kind of expose how stupid some things that were happening in the world were, but in such a funny way. I just always thought that it was I really think Russell Howard's Good News is
And then it had the nice story at the end.
Yeah,
like lift your spirits.
Yeah. Kind of thing, which I loved that show. I thought that show was amazing.
Does anyone watch The Daily Show?
I have done. I haven't
A couple
recently.
of times. I think I've seen it mostly like in clips on YouTube.
I used to watch it all the time when it was Jon Stewart, and I've now started to watch it again now that it's Trevor Noah.
I love Trevor Noah. He's hilarious.
He really does a good job on it as well. But I remember one of the shows, because John Oliver kind of cut his teeth on The Daily Show. He was on there for a very long time as one of their reporters. And then when Jon Stewart took a break, John Oliver took over. But one of their skits was it was when Fox News were doing a report about this shady Arab businessman who was sponsoring a mosque to be built on Ground Zero in New York, whereas actually what he was doing was sponsoring an Islamic education centre a few blocks away. So it was not quite the same. And they were going on about how he's this shady international businessman and doesn't pay tax and all that kind of thing. And then the message came through that actually he's one of the biggest shareholders in Sky International, and he's a very good friend of Rupert Murdoch. And suddenly Fox News had to reverse and change gear. And so they did this skit about, okay, so the people on Fox News, are they evil or are they stupid? And they had this massive debate. They had Team Evil and Team Stupid, and at the end of it you think, I can't decide which one. The case for them being completely evil and completely stupid is so good.
I love the a lot of the interviews that went out, especially with Trump supporters. I think it's probably from the Daily Show, because they do that sort of on-site reporting, don't they? As if they're a news show.
Yeah.
And there's a great one where they were interviewing some bloke who was saying, well, we can't trust Muslims because they don't respect women. Meanwhile, he's wearing a T-shirt, something, I can't remember what it said, but something like Monica
It's
Lewinsky
Hillary sucks, but not as much as Monica.
That was it, on his T-shirt. And he's like, we can't trust Muslims because they don't respect women. And then the guy interviewing him just sort of stands there, kind of waiting for the irony to dawn on him. And just like,
but the thing is, it never does, and he keeps giving clues and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, "Oh, can we see your shirt?" And it goes, "Yeah, Hillary sucks, but not as much as Monica." Still, it's Islamic. They don't respect women enough.
But that is Trump all over, though, isn't it? Because now he's complaining about being bullied by comedians and God knows what else. Like, he's the biggest
that's
bully
pretty much
there
what happened.
is.
Even Obama's been bullied by comedians, because that's
Everybody
what people in power have to put up with.
Exactly. I mean, I don't want to forget, and I'm personally in danger of forgetting. Just like, it's not just the racism; it's the misogyny that ran up in the run up to the election. I had a false sense of security that people wouldn't forgive him for that, but it didn't seem that. I think that was one of this isn't funny, but it's tragic, and with time that makes comedy. But yeah, I think one of the tweets that I keep quoting is maybe Donald Trump himself. No, it's maybe the people who voted for Trump aren't racists or misogynists, but they were the ones who decided that racism and misogyny weren't deal breakers.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I saw one thing about the kind of misogyny of not just Trump, but of the campaign in general, was that Hillary Clinton has been in kind of government for about 30 years.
And how long's Trump been in government
Well,
for?
it's not just that. It's that the
20
Republican
minutes.
Party, Fox News, all those kind of, all the kind of like Breitbart and the far right and all those kind of things, they trawled throughout her entire career and went under more scrutiny than any other political presidential candidate has ever been gone on. And all they could come up with was that she had some emails sent to one of her private servers. And you kind of think, well, if Trump had undergone that kind of scrutiny, he would be in jail, let alone not in...
But he didn't even go under that much scrutiny, and he still comes out with a thing like the bus incident, which, I mean, that's a great... bringing back to comedy, that was hilarious, because it's so absurd, the way... We're allowed to swear, right, aren't we? The pussy grabbing fiasco, like, it's just that... How can this not be a cartoon character? This is the president-elect of the American
I do
people.
think that a lot. Like, how is he actually real? Because there's still part of me that goes, this is just one big...
There is a small chance he won't get in, isn't there? Because the Electoral College votes on December the 19th.
Sorry, I think that's...
And there's people quitting. But there's Republicans quitting rather than because they don't want to vote for him.
But there's so much false hope. There's
Yeah.
the same thing with, Brexit might not happen. And
No, Brexit still might not happen.
What I'm hoping for with Trump is that maybe it's a bit like a Scooby-Doo character villain, you know, like because he used to be a Democrat. He used to give money to the Democrats ages ago, and then he suddenly
Not
switched.
even that long ago, I don't think.
Not that long ago, but I'm hoping that it's going to be like he'll just take off the Donald Trump mask and go, haha, I was a Democrat all along. And
Well, I can just to link it back to what we were talking about earlier. The writer of Back to the Future, when he wrote the character of Biff Tannen, what he said was, I wanted him to be kind of to embody the absolute worst of American society and culture. So I thought, who embodies the kind of the ignorance, the bullying, the kind of crass attitude, this sort of lack of any kind of talent of any point or any redeeming qualities? Who embodies that most? Donald Trump, and he wrote him to be exactly like Donald Trump.
So another link to comedy, and you guys might be able to help me out with this, is have you heard the Simpsons episode apparently predicted that Trump was going to... So I can't find the clip. I can't find it. And then I've started coming across articles that saying, it didn't really happen.
It did. It definitely did.
Have you guys seen the episode?
Yeah, the episode is where...
Lisa
becomes the president.
Future. And she's taking over from Trump.
It's essentially what it is Bart. I don't know if he hits his head or something like that, but he gets a vision of the future.
Yes. Yeah. But I was searching to just watch the YouTube clips. It's like, of course it's going to be on YouTube. It's got to be. Just as a clip.
It's very hard to find Simpsons.
It's just a line, isn't it? It's just Lisa sat in the White House and she says, we've inherited a lot of debt from President Trump or something like that.
There was a clip of him, a very short clip of him giving a presidential address as well.
I think that was made...
They've remade it recently.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was in the original one.
They're going to have to broadcast that soon at some point, aren't they? Rebroadcast.
He's probably going to quit just because he's not going to like all the coverage he gets. Like, South Park's going to go nuts on him, and everyone is. It's just, he's probably going to be like, might be able to take it anymore. You can.
Can you actually quit for being... Has anybody ever quit?
Everyone... I like as well how his followers on Twitter are like, but he's refused salary, which you actually technically can't do. He's not actually allowed to refuse salary.
He's saying that he's not going to be... He's going to give up his businesses. What he means is he's going to give his businesses to his children, which he was going to do anyway.
We need to move on.
Funny.
Let's move on from the doom and gloom politics that we've talked about for ages, but that's fine.
Yeah, the depressing real world.
Well, I'm glad I didn't include a review of a film in this episode. I purposely didn't do that because I knew we'd get a lot of mileage out of it. But I want to move in just general terms of comedy. Let's move away from the horror into the general terms of comedy. So the first thing I wrote down when I was thinking about this is, what is a comedy? What makes something a comedy? And I immediately thought, that's a stupid question, Christian. You ruined everything. But I actually think it makes...
You are very hard on yourself.
As I sort of went through it, I kind of started to think it makes more sense. Like, some things are very clearly comedies, but where is the line? Like, I feel like almost for no reason, animation immediately is a comedy, even though it's not necessarily... some of them are funnier than others, but I always feel like animation...
You've seen Mary and Max.
It's funny though. It's still funny. But it's
Not all animations are.
Not all, but when they aren't, they tend to feel like they're outliers, like they're outside. But when you search for comedy, pretty much every animation film pops up. Like The Lion King, I don't think is a comedy, but it
has funny
into
characters in it.
But it
Hamlet.
does, yeah.
It has quite a classic double act, doesn't it?
But when you this is not personal opinion. I'm just saying that when you search for something, if you search for comedy online, if you search breakdown of comedy on IMDb, a lot of films come up that are very borderline. And I think animation's one of those. I feel like animation seems to automatically be classed as comedy most of the time, and I'm not sure why.
But I think a large amount of that, though, is it's also not all, but the majority of animation is aimed at children, and there's only so much drama you could aim at children without making it a little bit lighter with some kind of like even with things like The Lion King.
Classify as a comedy.
I mean, are we talking? Sorry, are we talking about film, sitcom?
I'm talking about
TV,
film now, really.
Just film,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
in the live circuit,
TV.
it's a comedy if people laugh. That's a comedy on the live circuit.
I think film is a slightly blurrier.
But what you're saying, because a lot of animation films are stuff like you're saying that's aimed at kids, so Disney, Pixar, and those films are funny. I mean, they're sweet, and they, and some of them are kind of, death of lots of characters kind of thing, but they are at the kind of core of it funny films. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think quite a lot of
it's just animation. As I was making this list, the bottom of my head is like, why does every animation film seem to be classified as a comedy?
I think possibly because it's the kind of caricature effect. With animation, you get more of a caricature of a character rather than a character in a lot of cases. And again, it is like you were saying, it's an easy way to drop in some lightness is to make it a funny caricature of something.
Yeah. Well, in animation, I guess there are no rules for the world. You can anything can happen. You can fall out of a window and not die.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is going to be a safer environment to push the boundaries and be funny in lots of different ways, rather than if it's live action, you can't chuck someone out a window. You can,
unless it's a first floor window.
You can, and just make sure that you have a big mattress at the bottom.
Ground floor window, sorry, not first floor.
I mean, even on TV, I can probably count the number of non-comedic animations on one hand. I can't immediately think of any right now. But they do I do feel like it gets classified as comedy.
If you're talking about TV, I can offer some knowledge, if that helps. But yeah, there's been an interesting kind of development recently, this year, in fact, off the back of such a wonderful series as Fleabag, where that is now classified as a new term called sadcom.
Okay.
So it's been interesting because you see the last I'm actually been studying writing and producing comedy for National Film and Television School, and there used to be very set rules for sitcoms and studio sitcom, single camera sitcom, but then in the last, I don't know, maybe at least 10 years if not longer, there's been a rise in more and more single camera sitcoms with no audience, and they often kind of veer towards comedy drama. The difference being between sitcom and drama, one of the differences being that in a comedy drama, the character arc over the series, they can develop. Like, you don't have to reset at the end of every episode, whereas with a sitcom, you have to reset. Like The Simpsons is a perfect example where everything always goes back to the way it was, so that every episode can be individual.
Yeah, you always get back to the same equilibrium.
Yeah, and even with Frasier or Friends, they might get into a relationship, but that's basically the characters that will still have their comedic flaws will always remain.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Joey got more stupid, but that's because they realised that was his funniest thing.
That's what they call Flanderization, where you kind of exaggerate over time.
Yeah.
Because again, if it happened to Ned Flanders in The Simpsons, he started off as being a bit of a Christian, kind of nice neighbour, but then by the end of the series, he was kind of ridiculously caricatured in this.
Also very
way.
hot, Ned Flanders.
Yeah, there's a few.
But yeah, with the sadcom, so what's happened is there's been with the single camera shows like even Peep Show, which is a sitcom, but I once went to a panel talk and they had the wonderful writers of Peep Show, and I asked them, do you think that the characters have developed over time? And they had a little mini argument between themselves about whether that actually was the case. And that, I think there's been more and more of those kind of sitcoms that slightly tread that border between comedy drama and sitcom, and now you've got something like Fleabag where it is really very, very moving, incredibly sad, but also very, very funny, but in a dark kind of way. The character is very overtly open about her problems with sexuality, her obsession with it, and the way she uses it. She is a funny character. Funny things happen, slapstick things happen. The relationship between the characters is very funny as well, but it's got at its core something that is very dark, very moving, and really real, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
The first series of Red Dwarf was a bit like that as well, actually, I find.
But I think
it was
you
a
need
very
to watch
different
Fleabag.
No, but if you think about it, the whole kind of setup for the first series of Red Dwarf was that there was this guy who, you know, got put to sleep. He woke up and everybody he knew had died.
It's a very nihilistic kind of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you read the book, it kind of goes more into his kind of reaction. You know, Dave Lisser's reaction to being the last person alive and realizing that he is. Because at first, in the book, he doesn't have Rimmer. He is essentially alone with Holly, and he almost basically goes completely mad, and that's why Holly resurrects Rimmer. And it was kind of, that was a lot more shortened in the original series. But when he's kind of wandering around and kind of just picking up, going, "What is all this dust, by the way, Holly?" And he goes, "Well, that's Shen, your best friend." And he goes, "Oh, I've eaten half the crew," and that's it. You know, the kind of like the sudden realization. And there's bits where he has flashbacks where he's sitting in the club and kind of remembering being teased by his mates.
Isn't there?
And then he goes, you know, and he's saying to him, "Oh, leave it alone, guys." And then it kind of cuts back into him sitting on his own in the thing, going, "Leave it alone."
I would just say though that I think that's definitely a prime sitcom, because I mean, I haven't read the book, but the book is not the TV version, and
definitely.
It's a brilliant sitcom, and I love the fact that it's so, again, like we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, like it doesn't really matter that it's in space, and it's about these characters and about loneliness, isolation, and that is all fantastic, but those characters do reset every single time. And the character that it's kind of that they don't actually take it that seriously. You don't really get below the surface too much of the doom that you would feel in that situation if you were in it yourself.
I don't know, there are some quite almost Pinterest episodes as well. Even in the later series, there's one where there's Dave Lister and Arnold Rimmer. They're essentially I know the one. I think it's called Marooned, and they basically crash on the thing, and it is trapped in a room with someone you hate, and that's the thing. And there's this kind of thing where they're trying to survive, so he doesn't have enough food, and he's got to decide which of their kind of prized possessions they're going to burn in order to keep him warm so he doesn't die, and all this kind of stuff. And they go very much, they go deeply into the characters of Arnold Rimmer and Dave Lister and their background, and and why they are the way they are.
I guess
but they don't develop. I take your point there. They don't.
I guess
they don't change.
The other difference would be that I love. By the way, that's a great classic. Like Family Guy has there's so many episodes where it's the characters trapped in a room. It's brilliant. And then you just rely on the comedic flaws of the characters.
But again, that's what Porridge was. Quite literally. And they had one of the episodes in the first series was A Night In, where they're basically they're locked in their cell, and it's over night, and it's just them talking to each other.
I see your point though. I get your point with Fleabag. I also think Orange is the New Black is quite similar. I mean, the characters in some ways they have I wouldn't necessarily say that Orange is the New Black is a sitcom.
No, I think that would be a comedy drama.
It's a comedy drama in the same way that Fleabag is, in the same way that I think.
Well, no, Fleabag is a sitcom. Fleabag, and it is an interesting, because within the industry people are arguing about this, but it has been decided that it's a sad com is what they're saying. So this is the new era of it. And the reason one of the arguments that was put forward is that unlike other sitcoms, which one of the rules tends to end an episode, if not every scene, on your funniest gag. Just make sure you end on a gag. And there's with Fleabag, they break that rule so many times, where she's sitting there crying her eyes out.
Yes.
And I mean, I think is it the last episode? I can't remember, but where you've got sudden mind blank, but you've got I'm trying to remember the actors' names, and I love them both. who plays Fleabag?
It's Phoebe. Her name's Phoebe, but I forgot
Phoebe,
her last name. So give me 3
Thingy Wallace.
seconds.
Phoebe Thingy Wallace.
Yeah, and also the other guy who is in Outnumbered, who I love.
Bear with me 1 second. Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Waller-Bridge.
Is the actress.
Very annoyed with myself because she's fantastic. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and then the guy from Outnumbered. Is it anyone? Anyway, well, she and he are sitting there, and she is talking about this. They've had this moment. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but they've had this moment where they've both been completely honest about how awful everything is and what they're really feeling.
Yes.
She's in floods of tears, and your heart is breaking as a viewer for both of them. And he says a joke that is a callback throughout the series, and she laughs that laugh like I imagine you and your friends, Mel, at the end of last year, where you were in floods of tears. It's just awful, but just you laugh and you've still got tears everywhere. And he says, "See, I told you it was funny," and that's a callback. And it's Hugh Dennis, who did.
I was going to say Hugh Dennis because that's the only person I know out of.
No, and there's an article that I read about the rise of the sadcom, which I highly recommend reading, and
We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Oh, it's brilliant. But it did say that, that answers the question of a lot of people were saying, well, is this a sitcom? Is it a comedy? Is it a comedy? Because it's so tragic, and it's answering in its own script of, see, I told you it was funny. It has to be, because life is so dark and absurd that we need this kind of thing.
It's an interesting depiction of the character. It's a character that you can kind of imagine being your friend, being somebody that you know. And sometimes in comedy you see people and you kind of go, I don't know anybody that's like that. But I think with Fleabag you can just immediately go, yeah, that's a real person. That feels like a real person to me, which is why it affects you so much, I think.
Yeah, sometimes
in laughing with her when things are going.
Sometimes in comedy you have the what I like
to.
Term the creatively stupid. So stupid people kind of just, they don't know things. That's what makes them, kind of unintelligent. But in TV, stupid people are unbelievably unintelligent, and they come up with, can come up with vastly complex reasoning and things like this. But it's completely wrong. It's
well, define right and wrong.
as in incorrect
within the context, I think.
Yeah. Not as in like morally right or wrong, but as in
they've got the situation wrong,
yeah,
or they make the worst decisions.
Yeah, yeah,
well, that's a classic comedy trick.
Yeah.
Is misunderstanding. That happens in Frasier so many times. It's the classic of you're talking about like Niles is talking about a different girl, and Frasier's talking about a different girl to Niles, but they both think it's the same girl, so they both think they're competing for the same girl, and it's
the entire concept of Manuel in Fawlty Towers,
Yeah.
really, isn't it? Just misunderstanding everything.
There's also getting back to Spike Milligan. He wrote a skit with Eccles and Blue Bottle, and he basically said the setup, which isn't particularly important, is they're two undercover police officers. And they want to know what time it is. So then one of them goes, "Oh, that's all right. I've got it written down on a piece of paper, because I met someone this morning. I asked him what the time was, and he was very nice. He wrote down a time for me." And they have this huge conversation about how you can know what time it is. And he goes, and it always comes back to the I've got it written down on a piece of paper. That's how I know what time it is. And so there's things like so if someone asks me the time, I can show it to them, and they go, "Oh right, but it says 8 o'clock on here." Yeah. Well, it was 8 o'clock when he wrote the time down. And then, so what happens if someone asks you the time and it's not 8 o'clock? And he goes, "Oh, well, I won't show it to them then." and he goes, "Oh, right. But how will you know when it's 8 o'clock? Oh, I've got it written down." And it's that one, there's a whole kind of logical argument that goes through all of that. And every single step of the way is completely reasonable and logical, except for that first step. So there's this entire construct that's complete nonsense. But it only requires that first step, that first kind of suspension of disbelief, that you can have the time written down on a piece of paper and it can work like a watch. And it's fantastic.
Well, I feel like if we've come to a conclusion, it's just that comedy, the definition of comedy is sort of evolving currently.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I think it's an exciting time for comedy.
Yeah.
I think another thing about the definition of comedy is it's changed very much from, because a lot of it used to be people evolved from the stage, as obviously you from the stage, but it used to evolve from variety acts and things like that onto television. And now things just seem to be that's kind of been lost. I was wondering what your opinion on that was. That sort of
we were just talking about Fleabag, and that was a stage show, and
Oh,
then
cool.
it became a sitcom. So I'm actually going to see the stage show at Soho Theatre in 2 days. So it's kind of going back and forward, you see, which is great. And I do think that live comedy, I know that we're talking about film and TV mainly here, but live comedy, you cannot beat it. It is where new talent is nurtured, whether that be writing talent or performing talent. And so many people do consume comedy at home, Netflix, maybe at best the cinema. But, you know, live comedy, it can be super cheap, especially in big towns, you know, big cities. There are comedy nights, and I would urge everybody to go check out live comedy. We can't perform without an audience. It's nothing. I write all the time, and I try to hone my craft, but without an audience it means nothing. I can get awards, I can get great reviews. That's not everything. We need audiences, and to have a room full of people laughing is the most glorious thing in the world. And even if you're a little bit like me, maybe a little bit socially awkward, going to live comedy is great because you don't have to talk to anyone. You just go and sit and laugh.
Sit in the dark.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, also I know this is I'm just telling you what to do now, but I think often audiences forget that when you go to live comedy, it isn't TV. Please do respond, react, laugh, you know, join in. The more you give, the more you're going to get from the performer. So.
I think Billy Connolly once said, stand-up comedy is great because it's like a conversation where you don't say anything.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I mean, I like performing because I don't like talking. I'm very, very socially awkward, struggle with anxiety disorder pretty much every day to varying levels. But when you're on stage, everything's in control. There's no one around me. There's nobody that I need to actually talk to other than a huge room full of people. But it's a different kind of conversation. Yes. And it's much less scary for me than just sitting on the tube, surrounded by strangers and loads of different thoughts flying through my head, or even talking to people that I know fairly well. I still have all
interesting.
There's so many reasons why comedy's great.
There was a revolutionary writer called Marat in the French Revolution who
Offense revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, he had a terrible stammer. He was almost unintelligible when he was speaking, except when he was on a stage giving speeches, in which case his stammer disappeared completely, and he gave the most incredible kind of, you know, eloquent.
Well, do you know of Daniel Kitson?
Yes.
I do actually.
He's fantastic. He's one of the main reasons that I decided I wanted to get into comedy. Was he's a storyteller, comedian. He also does stand up, and he's supremely funny. But often in a kind of a very heartfelt way. It's hard to explain, but really highly recommend seeing his stage shows. A bit like a Charlie Brooker in many ways, but he had a really bad speech impediment, and sometimes it does get catches him out on stage, but learning these lines, getting it in a right kind of rhythm, it helps him overcome it, and it's great to kind of watch an audience even when he does have those moments where it comes back to haunt him. The audience is so with him. It's a part of who he is, and it's just very warm and inclusive, which is super.
Actually, Rowan Atkinson has a speech impediment as well. Finds it very difficult to say bees, which is why in one of the series where it was one where Lord Flashheart was there, so everyone was going bark, bark, you know, sort of, you know, woof, woof,
bark.
Woof. Yeah, no, that was a joke because that's the Lord Flashheart goes woof, woof, and then Bob, the driver, goes woof, woof, and then Baldrick goes bark. And the joke then after that is Blackadder comes in and he goes, oh God, it's like Batsy Dog's home in here. And they did so many takes of it because he would come in and go, it's like ba, 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 ba. And they did about 6, 7, 8 takes. And then Richard Curtis runs across, whispers to Rowan Atkinson, and they go for the next take, and he comes in and he goes, oh, it's like Crufts in here. And there was a massive laugh from the audience because it was kind of out of proportion to the funniness of the joke, but it was because kind of struggled along with him, trying to
Yeah.
get this thing, and then it was just, why don't we just say Crufts, and then it completely changed.
Well, this is I know your original question has led on to some interesting tangents, but yeah, this is something that I think is interesting in comedy generally. Again, especially in a live setting, or that's filming of Blackadder is in front of a live studio audience, so it's a similar kind of energy. It's very different with single camera work, but there's again Naked Jape. You and I've read The Naked Jape, Matt, but they talk about the idea that with stand-up comedy, it's about the audience is a beast, and so you're either killing the beast, so I killed it on stage last night, or the beast kills you, so I died on stage, and that was kind of the way it always used to be, especially with the male comedian dominated kind of, the old kind of
like the 70s Bernard Manning style,
the kind of place that I would not fit in at all. It's like every time you tell a joke they laugh, you win a point. It's super competitive, but nowadays there seems to be a rise in kind of more inclusive comedy and more I was about to say gentle, but I don't mean gentle, I mean it's much more like you, the audience, and I, the performer, we're going on an adventure together, or you're going to come in on it with me because you get exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to share some personal stuff with you, and it's going to be a riot. But it's much more almost. I keep sitting here, listeners, kind of throwing my arms out because what I'm feeling like is I want to hug the audience. It's like that kind of vibe more than It's
connecting with the audience rather than competing with the audience.
Exactly.
To perhaps oversimplify, there's more of a trend of comedians making fun of themselves rather than making fun of the audience.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got some friends. I'm really delighted to get to perform with a group called Abnormally Funny People, and they are a group of disabled comedians. So I'm a mental health girl, a mental health conditioned girl.
Mental health girl sounds like a
mental
brilliant
health girl.
superhero.
Not a very useful superhero.
Spreading good mental
She's
health.
hiding in the cupboard.
Hey,
She'll help in a minute.
maybe that's how we can win over Trump. To help Trump is actually sort out his mental health conditions, but like narcissism. Anyway, but the with them, there's some fantastic comedians, especially my good friend Lost Voice Guy. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He has a cerebral palsy, and the way that his cerebral palsy has manifested itself is that he struggles to move, but he can walk, and he doesn't have a voice. So he uses his iPad to speak, and he has so many fantastic routines. He won the BBC New Comedian of the Year award. I think it was 2013 that he won it. And one of his routines that I love every time, because it pokes fun at that kind of the old style comedy where he asks via his voice pad. That's not the right term, and he will kill me for saying that. But he asks the audience, oh, what's your name? And they answer, oh, that's a shit name. I've actually got Andrea typed in here already, so I'm just going to call you Andrea. So Andrea, where do you come from? Waits for answer. Oh, that's a shit place. So what do you do for a job? Oh, that's a shit job. It's all pre-programmed because it was all pre-programmed. Really, they don't really veer from what.
Like Stephen Hawking when he gives lectures. Because if you have a conversation with him, it takes him 2 minutes to answer you because he has to go through it. Yeah.
But I think this is another thing with live comedy is go out and see these kinds of comedians who are doing something different. And I mean, last night I had a brilliant gig. I was at a great venue called JW3, and there was Dane Baptiste, Desiree Birch, and Cindy V, and they were all talking about stuff that I think 20 years ago, so definitely in the 1970s, we would not have heard those voices on stage being that brilliant. I would highly recommend just seeing people who come from a different background to you and have different experiences, and comedy's a great way. If you're laughing at something, it loses its power. And if you're laughing at something, people are more likely to listen for
and it's
longer.
something that everybody does.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter your background, people laugh from all over that.
That's another reason I got into comedy as a career, is that I realised that if I wanted to talk about my mental health conditions with my friends, the scariest stuff about my mental health conditions, if I could just crack a few jokes and make them laugh, they would instantly relax more, and I could talk about it a bit more openly, and that was what I brought into the comedy really was realizing I could talk about my hallucinations and my the voices I heard in my head, quite literal voices I heard in my head. I could talk about it on stage if I could just make people laugh in a way that perhaps isn't putting myself down, but is putting the condition down, or it's not the sufferers.
Not putting yourself down, but it's it's saying, this is this is me.
It makes it a little bit less scary, I think.
Yeah.
If you make
Rather
people
than,
laugh
the problem
because they
with
relax.
Yeah,
so-and-so.
exactly. It's
Oh,
less...
the problem with the voices in your head. Why are we all doing this weird?
They're doing some
Everyone's
kind
doing a
of
dance.
jaunty arms, or the men are. The women are sitting just kind of. They were very still and prim and proper.
You spent the last 5 minutes going like this.
I know, hugging. I'm trying to hug the air, just because I want to hug. I want to hug your listeners. That's
It's the
what.
first time I've ever been called prim and proper. I'm really happy for that.
Yes, and I
Or
imagine
maybe-
it is the first time you've ever been.
Maybe we're just so cold.
Oh.
It's quite cold at the moment, so maybe
Yeah.
we're just
It
trying
is.
to conserve energy.
I think we're trying to hug ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or wearing jumpers. It's all, it's all good.
Well, that's us. That's us wrapping up. Juliette, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me again. Not sexually.
Yet.
Yet.
It would be great to have you again. Again, not sexually. But no, thank you very much. We are. I hope we were not too rambling and unprofessional, although that is our. That is what it says in our business
I love
cards.
rambling and unprofessional. That's my favourite thing.
Well, that's what we're really particularly good at.
No, it's been a delight, and thank you so much for having me.
Do you want to do any shout-outs? There's shout-outs. Where can people find you?
Yes, thank you. Well, people can find me in my flat, but don't come there because I rarely actually wash my clothes. But you can also find me on Twitter, where I smell a lot better, at Juliette Burton, JulietteBurton. You can find me on my website, www.julietteburton.co.uk. Facebook is Juliette Burton Writer Performer, and on all of those places you can hear about all the latest things I'm up to. I do have a YouTube channel as well if you want to check out any of my trailers for my shows, and I have shows coming up in the UK. I'm heading back to Australia. If anyone is listening in Australia, please come to see me at the Adelaide Fringe in February and March. But when I come back from Australia, I'll be performing at the Leicester Square Theatre on the 16th of March with the show that I was performing up in Edinburgh in August, which sold out every single day. Sold 99% of my tickets up in Edinburgh, which I was delighted with. Thanks, that's second year in the row, which I'm really happy with. But yeah, I'll be performing that show, Decision Time, at Leicester Square Theatre, 16th of March. And if you want to come to see Happy Hour, which is the new material night and is free.
Which is really good.
Oh, thanks, guys. The next one is the 10th of February, and that's at the Canvas Cafe in Shoreditch on Hanbury Street, very close to Brick Lane.
Wonderful stuff. Right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's just been, I keep saying it. It's just, should we just go have sex? 'Cause that's what's going on.
I think that's where it's all heading.
Yeah, it's
to be honest.
clearly where all of this is headed. It's been a joy, and I hope that everyone listening had a good time as well.
I do.